Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. I see a thumbs up. Maybe I'll wait for others to join. There's only two of you. I don't know if anybody else is gonna come. Well, anyway, I'm gonna start now. So, hello everybody, this is Lucas and welcome to European History. Lecture 1. A subtle change in the European Christian world. By the way, there might be some terms that you guys don't know and I didn't explain it well, and you could just stop me and ask me what the term means. So, when we are studying history, one important concept should be to keep in mind that things we see are different from the past. Historians try to understand the past as past people understood it themselves. And for example, in the past, people used to live with their domestic animals, and nowadays, scientists learn that humans contracted smallpox from cattle, measles from dogs, and influenza from pigs and birds. However, there are some facts that people from the past say don't know these things, and people in the past who live with animals are more likely to gain diseases from them. Medieval overview. And this is Feudal Pyramid, an important concept introducing how Middle Ages were like. At the top of the pyramid, we have there were monarchs, and there are the kings, emperors of the kingdoms, and the monarchs are unique and powerful. There's usually only one monarch per kingdom, so they are at the top of the pyramid, showing that they are small in quantity and more powerful than anybody else. And the second rank is the nobles or lords. With barely any transportation, it had been impossible for monarchs to rule their kingdom. So they gave some power to the nobles. Each noble will help the monarch to rule one region of the kingdom. When the nobles and lords receive power and lands, from the monarch, they must swear allegiance to the monarch and promise to defend the kingdom. And the third rank, we have the knights. The knights are warriors sponsored by the nobles and lords. On normal days, the knights don't have to do anything, but during the war period, knights will be soldiers that nobles will use to defend the kingdom. And the fourth and fifth are the merchants, serfs, and peasants, and so on. Moving on, we have the manor system. In the Middle Ages, religion was the most significant factor that holds society together. Without religion, the whole system collapsed. And why is that? In the Middle Ages, almost everyone in Europe was Catholic. The serfs and peasants didn't think it was unfair to work for nobles unpaid. They believed that God had given them these jobs and they must work hard. This way, they could go to heaven after they died. Now back to the manor. We can see that there's a barn, a watermill, pastures, and several fields. The manor had to supply food by itself. Again, there was barely any transportation in the past. Most manors couldn't get food from the outside, so they must depend on their own. Any questions? We're good? Okay, I don't have any replies. So moving on, we have the 100 Years' War. The longest war humans ever fought. So how did the war start? Remember when we talked about the king gave power and land to the nobles? There was once a French noble who had some land in France. Then this noble became the king of England. When this noble died, his land goes to his son, and so on and so on. But it represents that the king of England possesses the whole of England plus pieces of land in France, which lead to an awkward situation. And we could see that this green region is England, and the small portion of France is also controlled by England. And also there is a part of land it didn't show on the map, but that's not significant. So after the king of France, Charles IV died. Since he had no son, his cousin, this guy, Philip VI, the one on the left corner, claimed the throne of France. Meanwhile, Charles IV's nephew, the one on the right corner, also claimed the throne of France. One point worth mentioning is that the king's nephew, Edward III, is the king of England. If he became the king of France, then he will have both England and France. Imagine how powerful he could be. But people in France certainly didn't want the British to be their king. So they advocated Charles VI, the king's cousin, France, to weaken the English influence on France, seized some French territory that English possessed. This further angered the English people, and war is inevitable. At that time, almost everyone thought that France is going to crush England. France has a larger population, stronger economy, and most importantly, France has the most powerful knights. And they are heavily armored. When a group of knights riding horses and rushing towards you, it can be really intimidating. And we could see this guy. that is covered with irons and armors. And compared with France, England developed this cheap manufacturing longbow and wished to use the secret weapon to defeat France. So, who will win? The English longbowman or the French heavy cavalry? So, the first and most spectacular battle was the Battle of Crecy on August 26, 1346. French knights believed themselves invincible and they attacked. English longbowmen sent volley after volley of deadly arrows. The knights fall from horsebacks, who then lay helplessly on the ground in their heavy armor. Then, using long knives, the English foot soldiers attacked, slaughtering the French. At the end of the day, more than a third of French force lay dead. The English longbow had proven to be an effective weapon. With more and more battles, the English troops defeated the French army over and over again and took a lot of French territories. Look at the picture on the left corner. We can see that France in orange had lost almost half the land here, almost half the land compared with picture 1 to England. But then something happened. Look at the picture next to it, and we could see that French recovered most of its land, and even increased in size compared with picture 1. So what happened? Introducing Joan of Arc, also known as God's warrior. In 1429, a teenage French peasant girl named Joanne claimed that God had given her wisdom to rescue France from English conquerors. Joanne was just 13 years old, and nobody believed her after she successfully predicted the results of the next few campaigns. She had been taken seriously. On May 7th, 1429, Joanne led the French army into battle at the fort city named Orleans. The fort blocked the road to Orleans. It was a hard-fought battle for both sides, but Joan of Arc guided the French onto the path of victory. However, in 1430, the Burgundians, English allies, captured Joan in battle. They turned her over to the English. Joan was considered a witch and burned to death on May 30th, 1431. The French people were so desperate when they heard that Joan was dead. They turned their anger into motivation and forced the English invader out of France. And next, we have the Black Death in the 14th century. This deadly plague probably arrived in Crimea, this region, by the way of the Silk Road from Central Asia. In October 1347, 6 sailors on the ship brought the plague to the island of Sicily, over here. And by the new year of 1348, the plague had spread across Italy, France, and Spain. And the King of England heard that there was a deadly plague killing millions of people on the European continent. He ordered that all ships are prohibited to leave the ports to prevent the plague from coming to England. Somehow, the plague still managed to have crossed the English Channel to Britain by the summer of 1349. And by the end of the year, it had reached across the North Sea to Germany and Scandinavia. The first two waves of the plague killed 1/3 of the population in Europe, and the population remained low for the next hundreds years. Under such circumstances, the fear and suffering turned outward as spite, rage, and violence. For example, people considered that Jews had deliberately spread the plague. We know that these rumors were certainly not true, but in the past, such rumors could lead to deadly reactions. In 1349, about 1,000 Jewish people were burned to death in the city of Strasbourg. They were sacrificed under the anti-Semitic movements. So, any questions? Okay. So this is what's going on. The Black Death killed in total about 40 million people, and it spread across Europe and led to several violence reactions. And next we have Renaissance. Renaissance comes from the French term meaning rebirth. The Renaissance movements advocated the ancient Greek and Roman teachings. It's very much like Confucius advocated the Confucianism, 儒家思想, which originated from the early Zhou dynasty. And Da Vinci, I believe that the first thing we think when we talk about Renaissance should be Da Vinci. Da Vinci is a remarkable person. He's not only a great artist, but also an architect, engineer, militarist, and even a screenplay director. He managed to create many masterpieces that nobody else could achieve in art history. Look at some of his ideas in 14th century. We have a helicopter, tank, aircraft, accurate human anatomy, crossbow, and architecture. So Mona Lisa. Fun facts about Mona Lisa. Da Vinci was asked to create a portrait painting by this lady, but Da Vinci worked like a procrastinator. It took Da Vinci about 7 years to finish this painting. After Da Vinci finished this painting, he thought it was too perfect. Instead of giving it to the lady, he kept it and brought it to France. So Mona Lisa remained in France until this day. And The Last Supper is also a famous painting drawn by Da Vinci. The King of France loved the paintings, The Last Supper, at first sight. He ordered his men to use whatever method to bring it back to France. But since the painting was painted on the wall, there's literally nothing they can do about it. And this painting, Salvator Mundi, was sold for $450 million in an auction. It was one of the most expensive paintings in the world. And we have Michelangelo. Like Da Vinci, Michelangelo was better at sculpture. He and Da Vinci were competitors. Da Vinci believed that the sculptures were covered with dust, sweat with dirt, and there's marble powder all over the face and body. Michelangelo believes that oil painting a trick that only kids play. So these two are really competitive. And we could see that Michelangelo had many magnificent sculpture projects, and of course, yeah, and of course, Michelangelo was also a good oil painter. Um, his paintings were painted on the on the roof and walls on the Sistine Chapel. And we could see how vividly he drew this painting. And this is painting on the wall. And let's get a close-up. Really magnificent. And next we have Raphael. Raphael borrowed greatly from Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo in the field of painting. This painting is called this painting is called the School of Athens. Many ancient Greek scholars appeared in these paintings. And Raphael used two masters that he honored, Da Vinci and Michelangelo, as the models of Plato and Aristotle. And this is Plato, which is Da Vinci, and this is Aristotle, which is Michelangelo. And so Plato pointed towards the sky, as we can see his finger pointing towards the sky, advocated that he believes in the spiritual world, while Aristotle put his hand against the ground and advocated that he believes in the material world. And it is very interesting to see that Raphael used Da Vinci's Mona Lisa as a model for his paintings. And we could see these paintings, these two paintings are painted by Raphael, and this is Mona Lisa. And we could see the structure is really alike. So any questions? Okay. So most of the Renaissance painters adopted this painting skill called perspective. Each painting has its structures fixed on one point called the vanishing point. This helped to make the paintings more realistic. And we could see that these lines are all focused in one point. And these are actually cubes in reality, but from human eyes, this is what it really looks like when we see it. And so the painters adopted this human eye views and applied it to the painting, so it made the paintings look more realistic. And from some of the Middle Ages paintings, we could see that the perspective is really chaotic. And in Renaissance, of course, they have developed successfully with a skill of perspective, and we could also see perspective in Da Vinci's hand script. You have vanishing point here, and all the series are all focused in this point. Really interesting. So next, we go up north to the Northern Renaissance. So unlike the Italian Renaissance, which depicted more about God and Greek myths, the Northern Renaissance depicted more about normal family life, like this painting. the Arnolfini portrait. What is fascinating is that in the center of the background, there's a decorative convex mirror over here. And from the small round mirror, not only the back of the newly read can be seen, but also another person standing opposite them, which is the painter himself. Really interesting. Look at the painting around the mirrors. Each of them represents one Bible story, and we could see Jesus on the cross over here. And this is really small, and the details within a painting could be really magnificent. And next we have Albrecht Dürer. And this is a German, so I have to pronounce his name in German. Well, we have Dürer next. On the left, it is a portrait that he drew when he was 13 years old. And I guarantee you that I couldn't draw a portrait as vivid as Dürer could when he was 13. On the right, it is a portrait that he drew when he was older. And one noticeable point is his signature. And this is his signature. And it's a combination of A and D. We could see A here, and then D, which is the abbreviation for his name, Albrecht Dürer, AD. And this is his signature in the painting. Really interesting. When Dürer was firstly exposed to woodcut print and copper print techniques, he was deeply impressed. After studying in the workshop, he gradually began his independent work as a printmaker and copper engraver. And this is not a normal drawing. Dürer let you engrave the whole thing on a piece of wood first, then print it as individual pictures. And we could see this has many details and also including Dürer's own signature. And this is a picture of a rhino Dürer produced. He had never seen a rhino before. He just heard a traveler description about it. This traveler went to India and claimed to have seen a rhino. All I have to say is that Dürer had done a wonderful job considering he had never seen a rhino. And we could see this is really actually a rhino. And again, we have this interesting signature of Dürer. And so we have the Reformation. By 1500, additional forces weakened the church. Renaissance ideas challenged the Catholic Church authority, and it was difficult for the church to impose central authority. And finally, spurred by this social, political, and economic forces, a new movement of religious reform began in Germany. And remember when we were looking at the feudal pyramid, we could see that the monarch is at the top, but actually there's one guy above the monarch. And who is he? So does anybody know? There's one more powerful person who is above the monarch, the kings and emperors. So remember when we talked about almost everyone in Europe believe in Christianity.
Is it the Pope?
Yes. Alisa, wonderful job. yeah, it is the Pope. And remember when we talk about almost everyone in Europe believe in Christianity, of course, Catholic. The Catholic Church has its leader called the Pope, and he's considered as a successor of Saint Peter. Not important, but fun fact to know. Anyway, the Pope interpreted all the Bible teachings, and the Bibles were written in Latin, and all these church officials should learn Latin so that they could read the Bible. And the Pope is kind of like a human figure of God in the world. So he's not actually God. He's just a normal human, but he's was considered as a representative of God on Earth. So people have faith more in the Pope rather than God, and this is really well. Anyway, the Pope is kind of the ruler of the Christianity world. Since everybody in Europe believed in Christianity, he kind of like the leader of the whole Europe, which gave him so many power, so many money, and just led to the corruption of the church. And we know that the church, they should be holy figures, and they should apply God's will. And but this corruption, this desire of humans was just poison the teaching of God. And so if certain monarchs, kings, or emperors believe in Christianity, the Pope should control these kings. And he could just be like, if you don't follow my rules, I could tell God that after you die, you cannot go to heaven. And in the previous few centuries, the monarchs believe in these words, and they converted to the Pope, and they do whatever the Pope said they must do. And one interesting story is the Castle of Canossa. So the Pope, there was a Pope in the 11th century, and he didn't like the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. And so he's like, I'm gonna confront you, and I could also kick you out of your throne. And since the emperor is being elected, so he's really afraid that people who elected him really didn't like him, so he couldn't be re-elected again. So he came to Canossa with a bunch of soldiers. The Pope at first thought the king was going to kill him, and the Pope was scared, and so he hid into this castle called Canossa. But what it really turns out is that the emperor, he kneeled down in front of the gate of the Canossa, and he cried, "Oh, Holy Father, please forgive me for 3 days and 3 nights." Really interesting. Actually, what we see here is that the emperor is actually should be more powerful than the Pope, because Pope doesn't have any soldiers. Emperors, monarchs does. They do, and but still, he cried for 3 days and 3 nights, and finally, the Pope opens the gate and lets the monarch in, and said that he forgave the emperor. And 300 years later, in the 14th century, we have the Great Shiism. Remember this guy, Charles IV, and his father called Philip the Fourth, Philip the Fair. In Chinese, it's called 美男子, and it was considered that Philip the Fair was really handsome, so they called him this nickname. And so this king is really brave, and he didn't bow the Pope's teaching. since he normally a monarch is more powerful than the Pope, so he used a soldier and grounded the Pope inside France. And there wasn't any Pope in Italy, but there's a Pope in France. And then people in Italy think, oh gosh, we have to come up with a new Pope. So they re-elected a Pope, and so there's two Pope in Europe right now, one in France and one in Italy. Yeah, so this is called the Great Shiism, a split in the Western Christianity world. Some people believe in the Pope in France, and certainly more people believe the Pope in Italy. So back to the Reformation. Martin Luther. Martin Luther's parents wanted him to be a lawyer. Instead, he became a monk. All he wanted was to be a good Christian, not to lead a religious revolution. However, as the Catholic Church became more corrupted than ever, Martin Luther decided to do something. On October 31st, 1517, he posted his statement against the corruption on the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg. His action began the Reformation, a movement for religious reform. So this is a picture he putting the 95 Theses onto the gate of the church. So when other priests saw this statement and they thought it's really interesting when he publicly speak against the church, and he's really brave. So they put this statement on the printing machine, and we know that printing machine invented by Gutenberg in German has spread most of the ideas. They could print books more easily, and they could spread these ideas more easily. So they put this statement on the printing machine and spread Martin Luther's statement across a German state. So this is the Martin Luther's teaching. People could win salvation only by faith in God's gift of forgiveness. The church taught that faith and good works were needed for salvation. All church teachings should be clearly based on the word of the Bible. Both the Pope and church traditions were false authorities. All people with faith were unique, therefore people did not need priests to interpret the Bible for them. So all of which are against the Catholic Church teaching. The Catholic Church was shocked, and the Pope was like, "Who is Martin Luther? How dare he?" And so some people and who is the ones who have been controlled by the Catholic world, they paid heavy taxes, and so they advocated Martin Luther, and some did not. The emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, Charles V, opposed Luther's teaching. Charles issued an imperial order which declared that Martin Luther is an outlaw. But there are several German states who supported Martin Luther. And so this one German state called Saxony provided shelter for Martin Luther. In Saxony, Martin Luther translated the Bible from Latin to German, a language that ordinary people understand. But consider this. most of the people cannot read. They understand the language, but it doesn't mean that they could read it. So there's only a small quantity of people who know how to read. About least less than 10% people. So remember when we talked about the printing machine, when the printing machine printed Bible and this German translated version of Bible across the whole German state, people and it made since there are a huge quantity of Bibles and people could buy it in a cheap price. So people, although they cannot read, but they still bought the book since it's really cheap, and so they start reading and starting to know to study how to read, and this increase the literature level of the common German people in the early 16th century. So the Pope is the one who controls the Catholic world. Pope is a figure who interprets the Bible. And Martin Luther says that people don't necessarily have to depend on the Pope, and they could read the Bible on their own. So the Pope is like, then what do I do? So the Pope, he summoned Martin Luther to Italy, to Rome. Rome is where the Pope lived. And so Martin Luther was summoned, and people told him, don't go. If you go there, you will die. And Martin Luther said, oh, I must go. And I must stand out and speak against this corruption this corruption ideas. So he went to Rome, and fortunately he lived. And then he went back to Germany, and the German Emperor Charles V didn't like Martin Luther, so he summoned him again and said that Martin Luther should be beheaded. And he ordered the German states, his nobles, to capture Martin Luther and then kill him. But remember when we talked about the monarchs, they gave the nobles power and land, so that the noble, in fact, so that the nobles could control and rule some of his territories. And he also pledged allegiance to the monarch. But there are certain nobles that didn't do. This one in German, he's like everybody else was like in every other nobles said to the monarch that you have my words, you have my allegiance, I'll give you my allegiance. And so this very noble, he said, I'll give you my allegiance only if you are a wise emperor. So this time allegiance come with conditions. And so it comes that actually none of the nobles who actually listened to the monarch. So most of the nobles didn't apply this rule, and so that's why Martin Luther get to live in Saxony. Over time, people who have been oppressed by the heavy taxes, so they made their voice against the emperor and the Catholic Church. These people became Protestants, despite Martin Luther strongly opposed these revolts. The rebellious emotions intensified. Resistance and suppression eventually became a civil war. In 1555, Charles V, weary of fighting, ordered both Protestants and Catholics to assemble in the city of Augsburg. Charles V agreed that each state ruler would decide the religion of his state. This famous religious settlement was known as the Peace of Augsburg. And so this is supposed to be the end of the lecture, unless you guys have more questions. I mean, anything about this whole lecture. I talked about a lot in total of 200 years of history, from a medieval overview to the Reformation. Any questions? So if no question, I will briefly talk about the preview of the next lecture, and including, so we will have the 30 Years' War resulted from this Reformation movement, and then we will have the scientific revolution, and then the scientific method, Newton, Galileo, Descartes, and certain people. And then we'll talk about the Enlightenment movement. We will talk about some philosophy like Rousseau, Montesquieu, Voltaire, all famous. They are all famous philosophers. And then we will talk about the French Revolution and Napoleon. So this will be the next lecture. So if you don't have any questions, you can sign off.
Thank you.
You got it.